The first time I met the taxi driver, there was nothing especially frightening about him. He was a bit strange, maybe a little too interested in my life, but I'd had taxi drivers like that before. It was everything that happened afterwards that made me realise our first meeting probably hadn't been as random as I thought. It started after a night out in Manchester. I'd been drinking with a few friends in the northern quarter and decided to leave earlier than everyone else. It was around midnight. Rather use one of those apps, I searched a local taxi company on my phone and called the first number that came up. The man who answered said he had a driver nearby and asked where I was going. I gave him the general area where I lived, my first name, and told him where I was standing. About 5 minutes later, a dark blue taxi pulled up. The driver already knew my name, which I assumed had been passed to him by whoever had answered the call. He looked around his late 40s, maybe early 50s, short dark hair going grey on the sides, neatly trimmed beard, fairly ordinary looking. At first the conversation was normal. He asked if I had a good night and complained about the roadworks around Manchester. Then the questions became more personal. He wanted to know who I had been drinking with, whether I had a girlfriend, whether I was married and where I lived. It wasn't aggressive, it was actually the opposite. He was very friendly. But it felt like he was collecting information rather than making conversation. Something about it made me uncomfortable enough to change my direction. Instead of giving him my house address, I told him I was going to a friend's house in Salford. My friend wasn't actually home that weekend, but I knew his road well. I figured I could get there, wait until the taxi had gone, and order another one. When we arrived, the driver seemed surprised. It wasn't the area I had originally mentioned on the phone. I told him my plans had changed. He offered to wait for me. I declined. Before I got out, he handed me one of the taxi company's cards and told me I could contact him directly next time. His name was Martin. I put the card in my pocket without thinking much about it. The strange part was that he didn't immediately drive away. I walked up to my friend's house and pretended to check the gate while the taxi remained at the curb. Eventually, Martin pulled away. I waited another 5 minutes and then ordered another taxi home. By the next morning, it felt less worrying. He was probably just an overly chattery driver. Then, on Sunday afternoon, Martin called me. He wanted to know if I needed a taxi that evening. That caught me off guard. I hadn't called the company since Friday. I asked how he got my number, and he explained it had been recorded when I booked the taxi. Again, there was technically an explanation for it. Still, I didn't like it. I blocked the number. A couple of days later, an unfamiliar TikTok account began to liking and following my videos. There was no photograph on the account, no videos of his own. It liked almost everything I had uploaded. Then the same account followed my Instagram. What bothered me was the type of posts it concentrated on. Videos from night out, clips filmed near my office, pictures where streets or landmarks could be seen behind me. I removed the account and made everything private. Then a parcel arrived at work. The receptionist brought it over to my desk. Inside was a small model taxi. It was dark blue, the same colour as Martin's. Someone had attached a tiny printed sign on the roof. It said, "Daniel's personal driver." Everyone in the office thought it was funny. They assumed I had some sort of secret admirer. A few people joked about me having my own chauffeur. I laughed along because explaining the whole story would seem ridiculous. But the thing that bothered me was simple. I had never told Martin where I worked. He could probably have worked it out from social media, but that somehow made it worse. He hadn't accidentally discovered my workplace. He had looked for it. I threw the model taxi away before I got home. That evening, another number messaged me. It asked whether I liked my present. I didn't respond. Another message appeared saying the sender had gone into a lot of trouble to find me. I blocked that number as well. For almost a week, nothing happened. Then I went out for dinner with my brother. He ordered a taxi from his own account. I hadn't booked it. I hadn't posted anything online. Yet while we were travelling home, a message appeared on my phone. It asked why I was using a different taxi. That was when it stopped feeling strange and started feeling threatening. Because for Martin to know that, he either had to have seen me getting into another taxi, or he was already following me. I blocked my number and told my brother everything. He wanted to contact the police. I hesitated. The messages were creepy, but there was no obvious threat. I didn't even have proof Martin was sending them. Then on Monday morning, I arrived at work and saw his taxi parked across the road. Martin was sitting behind the wheel. He wasn't pretending to do anything. He was just looking towards the entrance. I went inside and told reception. Security contacted the police. 2 officers came out and spoke to Martin. From the office window, I watched him calmly show them something on his phone. A few minutes later, he drove away. The officers explained that Martin claimed that I'd been waiting for a customer nearby. He denied contacting me. I showed him screenshots of the messages. The problem was that none of them identified him directly. They recorded everything and advised me to save any future messages. For several days afterwards, nothing happened. I started taking different routes to work. A colleague walked me to my car at the evenings. I deleted TikTok completely and changed my Instagram username. Martin's taxi didn't appear again. I began to think the police visit had frightened him off. Then I received an Instagram message request from a woman called Lucy. Her profile looked completely normal. There were years of photographs on it, holidays, birthdays, pictures with friends, hundreds of followers. Her first message said she needed to speak to me about the taxi driver. That got my attention immediately. I accepted the message. Lucy claimed Martin had done the same thing to her. For the first time, I thought maybe I wasn't imagining how serious this was. I asked how she found me. Instead of answering, she sent a photograph. It showed the model taxi sitting on top of my computer monitor at work. The photograph had clearly been taken from behind my desk. Someone had been inside the office. Someone close enough to photograph me without me noticing. Then Lucy's profile picture changed. The photograph of the woman disappeared. In its place was Martin's taxi identification photo. A final message appeared. "You made me do this." I called the police immediately. This time everything changed. Officers came to my flat. They took copies of the messages, account names and telephone numbers. Someone from the original investigation team became involved. The fake Instagram account disappeared shortly afterwards, but apparently not quickly enough. Police managed to connect some of its activity to a device associated with Martin. His home and taxi were searched the following morning. Later that afternoon, an officer called me. He wouldn't explain exactly what they discovered. All he did say was that my complaint was no longer being treated as an isolated incident. I asked whether they had found things relating to me. There was a pause before he told me they had. He recommended I stay elsewhere for a few nights. That frightened me more than anything Martin had actually sent. My brother collected me after work and I went back to his house on the other side of Manchester. As far as I knew, only my family and the police knew where I was. We kept the curtains closed. My brother parked his van across the driveway. I switched my phone to silent and tried to not look outside every time a car passed. At around 11 at night, the investigating officer called again. Martin had been questioned. The police still wouldn't tell me exactly what they found, but the officer said they were now investigating other incidents connected to him. He told me the matter had become a wider inquiry. Someone would contact me directly in the morning. The call ended. For the first time in weeks, I actually felt relieved. Whatever Martin had been doing, the police now knew about it. It wasn't just me to convince people something was wrong. I put my phone down. Less than a minute later, it vibrated. Unknown number, no photograph, no name. Just one message saying, "Your taxi is waiting outside."